Hello class, this is a video tutorial on the expansion or the expanding algebraic groups. So let's get straight into it. This comes off the principle of the distributive law. The distributive law states that if you have, let's say, a number outside a group, so for example, A outside B plus C, or even if it were a negative, so it could be A times B plus C, or it could be A times B minus C. This actually means it's going to be A, this number, whatever it might be, times B, so it's going to become A B, and whatever the symbol might be, we can put it as plus minus, and A times C will be A C. Now this won't make much sense as of yet. It'll make far more sense the moment we do it with an example. So let's go straight into it. We'll have 3 outside y plus 7. Well, using this principle, it's going to be 3 times y is 3y, and then 3 times 7. 3 times 7 is 21. You can also, we'll do it with more examples. If we have example B, it's 5w outside 2w minus 3z. The same principle applies even if it were letters. So it's going to be, we'll do the numbers first. 5 times 2 is 10. W times W, well, that's the same number multiplied by itself, so it's W squared, which we're finished with this one. So 5 now, 5 times negative 3. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And W times Z is just WZ. We'll keep going. Next example, example C. We're getting a little bit more complicated. 2a squared 3a to the power of 4 plus 7b. Let's take a look at that one first. And then the same rule still applies. It's going to be 2 times 3, so it's going to be the numbers first. 2 times 3 is 6. A squared times a to the 4, well, that's going to be, if you remember your index laws, we know that we're going to add those numbers. So it's going to be 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 times 7 is plus 14. A squared times b, well, that's just a squared b. Now the same thing applies even if it were a negative number in the front. So that's set 1. So we'll go with 2a, these were 1. 2a, let's take a look at what happens if it were, say, negative 4 outside 5a plus 3b. Well, the same thing still applies. It's but instead of just a positive 3, we have to take into account that negative in front. So it's negative 4 times 5 well, 4 times 5 is 20. Negative 4 times a positive 5 is a negative 20. That's just A. The same applies. Negative 4 times positive 3, that is negative 12B. A few more examples. This is 2B. For 2B, let's make it negative 2 outside 3x minus 7y. Same thing, negative 2 times 3, it's negative 6, and then x must go somewhere. So there's the x, there it is. Negative 2 times negative 7, well, 2 times 7 is 14. Negative times a negative is a positive y, because that y has to go somewhere, it can't just vanish. Now let's jump straight to the deep end here. That's 2b, this is 2c. Let's make it negative 3w squared outside 2w to the power of 3 plus 5w to the power of 4 z. Now that may look very complicated, but the same thing. It's going to be, well, we focus on the numbers first now, just to break it down. 3 times 2 is 6, but negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. It's going to be a w. And once again, from the index laws, those will add. Okay, we're finished with that. Now it's going to be negative 3 times positive 5. Well, 3 times 5 is 15. Negative times a positive is a negative. W's first. So that's going to be a W2, W4, so it's going to be a total of W6 and Z by itself there. Now it doesn't get any more difficult if we have multiple groups in the same expression. By that I mean, let's take into account, for example, let's go further. 3a, let's take a look at this. 4 outside 2m minus 3 plus 3m minus 2. Let's look at this seemingly complicated problem. We just have two separate groups now. Well, all we do is we focus on one at a time. So we'll focus on this. 4 times 2 is 8. Well, there's an m there, so it's going to be m. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. We're finished with this group. And we're going to move on to this one. I'm going to write it here, right next to it, because it has to continue. So it's going to be positive 3 times m. So that's going to be positive 3m. Then it's going to be positive 3 times negative 2. Well, it's negative 6. Now this step you don't have to write. You can skip this step, but I like to write it by moving the like terms next to each other. So we have 8m, and there's an m here as well. So we're going to move the m's together. Then I'm going to move just the number. So this one doesn't have a letter, so it's going to be minus 12 next to this guy, minus 6. All I did was I just moved them around, but I keep the symbols in front of him. So look, positive 3m, and then that positive stays with him. Now here's what I said. You could skip this step and move straight to this one I'm about to write. So you could have just done 8m plus 3m, which is what's happening here. 8 plus 3 is 11m. Minus 12 minus 6, well, that's negative 18. And that is the simplified expression of this once it's expanded. So even if you have something that looks complicated like this, all you have to do is just focus on one group at a time and just simplify. Take it one step at a time. Let's take a look at a slightly more complicated one. Let's take a look at this one. 2 outside 3p plus 4q minus 4 outside 2p minus 3q. All right, so let's take a look now. Here we have, we're going to expand this group first. So this will become 2 times 3 is 6p. 2 times 4 is plus 8q. I'm going to continue the problem here. I'm not going to separate it so far away. I'm going to leave it right next to it here. It's going to be minus 4 times positive 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. But it's a negative 4 times a positive 2. So it's going to be negative 8p. Negative 4 times negative 3. Well, 4 times 3 is 12. Negative times a negative is positive 12. Q. And once again, we can skip this step, but I'm going to do it anyway, just so you're clear on what's happening. I'm going to bring these p together. So I'm going to write this one as it is, 6p. I'm going to move this negative 8p closer, negative 8p. I'm going to move them a little bit closer. Then I'm going to move this one closer to, I'm going to move this 8q closer to the 12. So it's going to be plus 8q plus 12q. Again, you don't have to write that step, but I just do it to make things a little bit easier. 6 minus 8, because 6p minus 8p, well, that's negative 2p. Positive 8 plus 12, well, that's 8 plus 12. That's 20q. Well, that's the end of expanding algebraic groups.